We've seen things from the Toronto Police Association who say that the vast majority of guns that they take in when they're investigating a crime are illegally smuggled into the country. And we see other things just talking about how these confiscation schemes don't work as well. Like academics say the common sense thing out loud, and they're like, criminals aren't going to participate. They're not going to walk into the government office and say, "Here's my illegal firearm, Mr. Sir."
This is the Canadian Taxpayers Federation podcast, where we are fighting for lower taxes, less waste, and more accountable government. I'm Chris Sims. I'm the Alberta director here for the CTF. I'm here with my good friend Gage. Gage is in charge, hi Gage, of the prairies. And little bit of inside baseball, his nickname inside the house is 12 Gauge, because he's the guy in charge of our gun file. Now, for folks who might have just woken up from a coma, welcome back. The one problem, though, here that we're going to talk about is the fact that this government is confiscating slash taking, seizing firearms from law-abiding firearms owners. So that's a problem for many reasons, obviously. Number one, this is going to be a huge waste of money, like big time. They're probably going to waste billions of dollars on this thing. And two, the cops themselves say this is not going to help people. It's not going to make things safer because newsflash, it's not the law-abiding firearms owners that are the problem, and gangbangers usually don't register their guns. So, Gage, this was quite the treat in the House of Commons that we watched a couple of days ago. So I just want to set this up real quick because I'm going to have you go through it for us because you're a firearms owner, I'm a firearms owner. We need to go through this because I want you to explain this to our listeners who aren't firearms owners, why this exchange in the House of Commons is a big deal. So setting the stage. We've got Andrew Lawton, okay? You might remember him from such things as True North, okay? He was a longtime host there, longtime radio host before that. He's now a member of parliament, okay? Politician. He's representing the London area. He stood up and started quizzing the new public safety minister, Gary Anandasangaree, about the firearm seizure, where they're going to come in and seize firearms and give you some monetary compensation. Can you go over why, first of all, why this was such a big deal that Lawton stood up and started quizzing the minister like this about the details of the gun seizure?
Well, Chris, to be frank about it, I've had bad days at work, right? Things haven't gone well sometimes, and by the end of the day, I don't want to see my laptop anymore. But I don't think I've had as bad a day at work as the new Minister of Public Safety did. So the important part here is the Minister of Public Safety is the guy who's in charge of Ottawa's gun ban and confiscation program, right? He's supposed to be the one overseeing the thing to take hundreds of thousands of firearms from Canadian firearms owners and potentially waste billions of dollars doing it. But then the problem comes in is he doesn't seem to know a single thing about the thing he's supposed to be in charge of. And that's bad news for gun owners because it shows that this guy just doesn't know what he's talking about. But it's also bad news for taxpayers because if they were going to waste a bunch of money to start off with, I can't imagine it's going to get anywhere near better with a guy who has no idea what he's talking about.
Not the first beginning of what he's talking about. Like, I'm trying to think of an example of how bad this is. I don't know. It's like somebody who's the health minister has never like seen a Band-Aid. Like,
Yeah. Well,
really, like no connection.
I think the best way to show is kind of just to show the folks part of the clip. So if we
Yeah,
start
okay.
off with, we see Lawton ask the minister how much has been spent on the gun confiscation so far, and here's what the minister had to say.
How much has the Liberal government spent so far on the confiscation scheme?
Well, Minister.
Total amount budgeted in total is $597.9 million over 3 years.
Member.
The question was how much has been spent to date.
Minister. Now, member.
The government's own numbers in September of last year said it was $67.2 million. How has the amount gone down in the intervening months?
Well, Minister.
So it's $20 million for the first phase of the business buyback. More will be allocated and is allocated towards the individual gun owner.
Chair, my question, how much has been spent in total by the government between May 1st, 2020 and now?
Now, Minister.
$20 million.
Now, member.
How has the number gotten $50 million smaller than in September of 2024?
Goes towards administration and setting up the program, but the buyback itself is $20 million that's been spent.
Honourable member.
So the minister is giving a number that's deliberately deflated?
Honourable Minister.
Is a member accusing me of misleading? I don't think he is, but no, I'm giving numbers that are accurate. $20 million.
The Honourable member.
I was asking for the total, but I'll move on and we'll look at this later. When the figures were presented by the government in September of 2024, $11.5 million had gone towards software, logistics, and communication support. Did any of that go to any of the suppliers or vendors involved in developing the ArriveCan app?
Honourable Minister. The Honourable member.
So that was a negative. He didn't answer that one. But he goes on, folks. Go back and watch the entire thing in its entirety. We're going to go through the Q&A here, though. The second one was, how many firearms are going to be confiscated? Listen to this.
How many guns have been seized so far under the buyback and confiscation scheme?
The Honourable Minister.
1,000.
The Honourable member.
What was the price per gun that the government paid for these?
Minister.
I will be able to get back to my colleague.
The Honourable member.
How many firearms does the government believe have been prohibited that will be collected under this confiscation scheme?
Minister.
Anticipation is about 179,000.
The Honourable member.
Are all of those firearms semi-automatics?
The Honourable Minister.
I don't believe so.
Yeah. So the problem with that one is that he's not reading reports from the own government, right? So he said about 179,000 firearms need to be confiscated from gun owners. But way back in 2021, so this number is probably higher now since the government has continued to ban more guns. The parliamentary budget officer said the number is around 500,000 guns that need to be confiscated. So when we look at cost to taxpayers on that, the PBO said it would be about 756 million. But the important caveat there is that's only to actually buy the guns from owners, to give them compensation. That doesn't count for the bureaucrats working in Ottawa who are sending emails on it, the people who have to go and get the guns somehow, how they're going to ship them, how they're going to make them inoperable later. It doesn't include any of those costs. And the minister seems to, first of all, not know how many guns are out there, which is a problem for the guy who's supposed to be in charge of this thing. And then if he doesn't know that, he also doesn't know how much it's going to cost. And that's also a huge problem for taxpayers as well.
Yeah, this one, the next one, this is when it really starts blowing my mind. Okay, listen to Andrew Lawton quiz the safety minister about what an RPAL is.
Does the minister have an RPAL?
Minister.
Can you repeat that question?
The Honourable member.
I'll rephrase, Chair. Does the minister know what an RPAL is?
The Honourable Minister.
I do not.
Member.
Yeah, not good. So restricted, okay, it's having your restricted license. For normal people talk, that's for handgun owners. You have to have an RPAL to own a handgun. The fact that the minister didn't know this was pretty surprising because you're onboarded by your staff right away. Like he would have gone through that binder already. So I don't know what he was doing.
No, and it's a weird part of hubris to be like, I'm going to be in charge of this program to take away guns from people, but not understand the process they went to get them in the first place, right? So to get a possession and acquisitions license, PAL, or the restricted one, RPAL, you've got to take a course, which Lawton talks about in the next clip, the Canadian Firearms Safety Course. And it's not hard, but it is very thorough, important, and really focuses on safety because I took it when I was 12 years old. I dug out in the back of my library and I found the very fancy hunter safety handbook that I had as a kid with my chicken scratch on front so I could pass the course. And it goes through exactly how to be safe with a firearm, what firearms are for and not for. And anyone who goes through that course knows that law-abiding gun owners are the ones who treat the guns with the most safety, right? When you're taking the course and you're doing the portion where you have to show an instructor how to load and unload a firearm, if you point the muzzle, like the barrel, at the instructor, it's an instant fail. And there was people in my class who did that and they had to retake the course next year because of how important safety is, because people who use firearms understand what they are. And obviously,
Yes.
the minister does not.
Yes, this is what I really need to stress to folks, especially those who aren't firearms owners, legal law-abiding firearms owners. It is a tool. It is a very potentially dangerous tool. So you have to know what you're doing and safety first all the time. Like there's no goofing around. Like when you go to a firing range, okay, where you go to legally do target practice, if you start acting like a jackass, like you're gone. Like you're banned, a word gets around, like you're in deep trouble. Like you cannot go past the firing line. Like your muzzle has to stay trained downrange. Like there's all sorts of rules, okay? They're really big into rules. And the fact that this minister couldn't explain the CFSC, didn't even seem to know that there was a firearms safety course. In fact, let's just play that last clip, okay? Because then it kind of melded in together. But I want him to answer about the fact that he didn't understand there was a safety course, because the end of this is critically important. Because he says basically this isn't about law-abiding gun owners. Watch this.
Does the minister know what the CFSC is?
Minister.
I do not know.
Member.
I'll stipulate, Chair, that is the Canadian firearm safety course that all gun owners in Canada have to do to get their firearms license. Has the minister ever done the Canadian firearm safety course?
The Honourable Minister.
Speaker, it's my third week on the job. No, I have not.
The Honourable Member.
Does the minister know what safety classes and safety demands are expected of law-abiding Canadian gun owners?
The Honourable Minister.
This is not about law-abiding gun owners, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member.
How can the minister make that claim when he doesn't know the basic fundamentals of law-abiding gun ownership in this country, Chair?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Bill 21 is meant to get serious, dangerous weapons off our streets.
The Honourable Member, very briefly, and just confirming that he's splitting his time 3 ways.
Chair, will the minister commit to taking the Canadian firearm safety course so he'll know what he's talking about?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I do not intend to purchase a firearm or use a firearm.
That to me was a cherry on top, Gage, because this is all about law-abiding firearms owners. Like, okay, just for a second, does this minister think there would be this big hullabaloo if this was about like criminals not getting guns? Like, nobody would be opposed to this. Like, it wouldn't be a thing. There would be no bumper stickers. There would be no organizations other than, like, the bad guys, but they don't typically lobby Parliament. Like, that was shocking to me. Of all the really dumb answers he gave there, him saying this isn't about law-abiding firearms owners, that was the most mind-blowing to me.
Right. And that's the whole problem, because as you said, that's the only people it's about, and that's why people are sounding the alarm about this scheme, because the government has always liked to say that it's about making people safer, but it's actually just about wasting money, right? So back in 2020, when the government first announced this gun ban, almost a little over 5 years ago, and still hasn't got it done, we've seen, so since those guns were banned, people who own them aren't allowed to use them. So it's illegal to use those firearms, right? So as law-abiding gun owners, they're obviously listening to the government on that, even if they don't want to. But since that time, gun crime in Canada has increased, right? Because it's not law-abiding firearms owners who are committing these crimes, it's criminals. We've seen things from the Toronto Police Association who say that the vast majority of guns that they take in when they're investigating a crime are illegally smuggled into the country. And we see other things just talking about how these confiscation schemes don't work as well. Like academics say the common sense thing out loud, and they're like, criminals aren't going to participate. They're not going to walk into the government office and say, here's my illegal firearm, Mr. Sir. The only people who do that are people who respect the law, and they're going to do it. But the problem is twofold, right? It won't reduce gun crime, as we've seen. These guns have been banned, crime is up. And two, it's going to cost a lot of money. So you combine those two things, no results for a lot of expenses, and it's bad news for taxpayers. And then the worst news is the minister in charge doesn't seem to have any idea what he's talking about.
Not the foggiest. I'll leave folks with this little tidbit. For folks who are like, oh, how do they know it's going to be a waste of money? So, number one, because the government is doing it. Okay, that's the simple answer. It always happens. It doesn't matter what scheme the government has, they'll blow a ton of money on it, and it usually doesn't work. Two, though, experience. So the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, we got started up in 1990, okay? That was right around the same time that two big things happened that upset a lot of normal law-abiding people. One was the GST. Two was something called the Long Gun Registry, okay? And this is way back in the day. Ask your parents about it for folks who are younger. That's back when they said, we're going to make you register your long guns with the government. In this case, it literally means a long gun, like a rifle or a shotgun, not a handgun. So most farmers, ranchers, hunters, all the rural folks who keep these as tools the same way you would a chainsaw, okay, or a pickup truck, they typically have long guns, is what they're called. And it was such a farce, Gage, and I know you know this, but having actually been on the Hill when all this was going down was wild. They were guessing it'll cost around $2 million with an M back then. Fast forward and registration of soldering guns by mistakes later, it wound up costing close to $2 billion. And again, doesn't make people safer because it was the law-abiding, they used to say duck hunters, that you were going after, and it never made any sense. Gage, are you hopeful at all that this sort of exposure with these kind of clips and this kind of absurdity in the House will kind of shake things up a little bit and maybe make them think twice about going after the good guys here?
Well, I hope so, right? Because it shows that the minister in charge doesn't actually understand firearms in any way, right? Do you think people are talking about how it's about things that are dangerous? But if you put this stuff out there, you realize that it's not actually about going after dangerous criminals. It's about wasting a bunch of money, taking guns from people who were law-abiding. So I'm hoping that, the regular person sees that and says, maybe this isn't a good idea to waste potentially billions of dollars on this program, right? Because as you mentioned with the long gun registry, that was a boondoggle, cost taxpayers way too much money. And it's shaping up to be the exact same thing. So back in 2019, to go even further back into history than the 2020 ban, the Liberals were like, it'll cost $200 million to do this program. But as we saw in the earlier clip, they've already spent $67 million, and they haven't got a gun back yet from an individual Canadian. So that's a bad warning sign. But then we see other independent estimates that try and add up all the costs of the guns, the administration, everything else, that show it could be up to $6 billion for a program that won't do anything.
$6 billion, folks. Picture 6 brand new state-of-the-art hospitals, like shiny ones. That's how much they'll waste on this law, which does nothing to improve public safety, according to the people who actually know what they're talking about, police officers in this case. $6 billion. And just a reminder, we have unmoney right now. Like, our debt was doubled by the last government, by the Liberal government. It's more than $1.2 trillion, okay? And going up rapidly. Like, we're spending more on debt interest payments than we are as a line item on the Department of National Defense. Think about that. Like, that's how much we're spending on our debt, just the interest. But we're going to spend, what did you say? How many billions they're guesstimating on this?
Well, the government isn't
6?
estimating that. Other people who are much smarter than it seems to be, than the bureaucrats at public safety, are estimating $6 billion.
$6 billion. Why not? Let's do it twice. Why not? We've got extra money. Gage, thank you so much for bringing this to our attention. Kudos to Andrew Lawton for putting the minister on the spot there. I was surprised the minister kept standing up when he knew he was just going to say the wrong thing. But this is really illustrative of the point that this government doesn't know what it's doing in this case. It's not going to make people safer. And boy, oh boy, are they going to waste our money. Folks, if you want to help the fight, go to our website, taxpayer.com, sign the petition to stop this wasteful gun confiscation.